Well, thanks to all of you for joining us today for our meditation. So wonderful to see all your beautiful faces and to read all your affiliations in the chat. Thank you so much for being with us. And I want to introduce our leader for today. Our leader today is Melusina Gomez, who is a curandera ritualist and interdisciplinary artist whose healing arts offerings combine the principles and practices of Curanderismo and Nahualismo. Curanderismo is a traditional healing art from Mexico, which blends indigenous wisdom with influence from Europe to address trauma and imbalance. And Nahualismo is the indigenous dreaming, healing, and sorcery tradition of ancient Mexico. Melusina has studied and practiced indigenous healing techniques for over 20 years and has applied these traditional methods to one-on-one healing sessions, workshops, public ritual, and healing groups within mental health facilities for survivors of trauma, abuse, neglect, mental illness, and human trafficking. The mission is to reconnect our postmodern age with ancestral wisdom, lineage reclamation, and practices for empowerment and deep healing. We're so happy to have you back with us today and to guide us, and we treasure her, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you to everyone who is coming in for teachings and for the practice today. It's such a beautiful community, and I really love presenting to this community. So thank you for having me again. I am, like we said, I am a curandera and just a practitioner and lifetime student of Nahualismo and Curanderismo. And I'm very honored to be able to share some things from those traditions and from my far back ancestral culture. I, of course, was born here and grew up here. So I'm very much also Mexican American, and like a lot of people, you know, never had the opportunity to grow up within those traditions. So I spent a lot of my life really looking back to find what that lineage was and what my impulses within it were. And so I'm really very honored and very grateful to have found what I found from the ancestral realm of my culture and what was passed down. And what was passed on was so much for everyone at this time, and not just for those of us who happen to be born within that line, you know, one way or the other, however diluted. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about tonight. To frame it, we're going to begin with just a short discussion, because I know there's a lot of time, not a lot of time, we'll spend more time on the practice. But I will talk a little bit about the prophecy that comes from the culture of the Aztec, the Mexica, and that relates to the years we're in right now, very directly. And then we'll be doing a practice that comes from what was passed down to us in terms of how to prepare ourselves and heal ourselves and help ourselves to get through this time with grace, and also perhaps to take the opportunity for spiritual development that they also predicted to be a part of this era, along with some of the more hard aspects. And before we begin, I also want to say I'm a mother of a 3-year-old who hopefully will be a part of this next generation to come up and do more. And also in this time of you know, so many weird changes, there's no childcare, so you might see him pop his head in and try to say hello. So just so you know ahead of time, he's probably going to nap, but just in case, you might see his little face come around. Okay, so let's begin. I like to actually start by having everybody just close their eyes and take a deep breath. And wherever you are, I'm going to shake the rattle, and we're just going to take a moment to call our energy home to ourselves here, and then to honor the ancestors that are with us. So that would mean those of your own lineage and of your own spiritual practice traditions. So the wise ones that have helped you get this far. And also the ones who are the ancestors of the land and the spirits of the land where you are right now. So even if you don't know the name of those tribes, take a moment in your heart to say thank you for allowing us to be here, and include them in the practice that you're going to do tonight, just by way of honoring and welcoming. So let's take a deep breath. And whatever you've been doing today, let's begin by calling your energy back to your body, all the places you've been virtually or physically, and whatever thoughts and concerns you've had, calling yourself back home so that all the strands of energy that are yours are with you, close, tight around your body, making your energy body bright and compact. Just doing the grounding. All of your soul back here, ready for this short moment we have to share. Om Teoro. I'm going to begin with a prayer. Tlatsokomati, Om Teoro. I want to say thank you to the ancients who have provided for us with so many observations and teachings, and with so many sacrifices, so that all of us from all the places that we come from could survive, could come this far, and could now be the ones who are the stewards of the earth, and are the ones who will become the ancestors of the future generations. And my prayer is, continue please to guide us and have patience with us, to teach us and to help us to grow into the potential that we can become, so that we can continue to harmonize with this earth as she changes her dream, and that we can take better care of her and each other, so that we may all thrive. Om Teoro. So, again, thank you very much for being here for these teachings. So what I want to share might be a little bit, like we could spend a lot longer talking about it than this short little introduction that I'm going to give. But I did want to give you some of the basic information about the Mexica Aztec calendar prophecies for our time, so that we would understand what practice we're about to do and what its significance is for us right now. So at the time when the Aztecs were a thriving culture, before the Spanish Inquisition, so say like the late 1400s, early 1500s, they were very, very based in this notion of collecting knowledge and looking into the movement that they saw of the earth in relation to certain cosmic forces and movements. Like they considered the Pleiades, the moon, the sun, Orion, to be some of the major forces that affect the planet. And so very complicated mathematical calculations about how much time it took for the earth to rotate in certain ways, or to move around, or have other planets move around and come back into the same formations that we could see a certain way from the earth. And that's how they were making observations, and no one knows exactly what tools they were using to make such precise ones. But they created an entire cosmology, including predictions and practices of aligning with those forces that they meant to teach, to share, that they shared with other cultures at the time, and that are at the heart of what got passed down. One of the most important counts was the very, very long count. Something that actually came from Egypt originally was called the procession of equinoxes. So the procession of equinoxes was a cycle of years like 26,500. And it breaks down with the Mexicas into 4 cycles that they called suns. So each one of these cycles that I'm calling suns and that they called suns that we're talking about right now tonight are really long counts. So like 6,625 years. So when we're talking about epochs, or right now being a time of changing of eras, epochs, suns, we're talking about a very long, long time that we're moving out of, and to another stretch of a very long time. So just to frame that what we're seeing right now at the transition from one to another is just the beginning. So just having in your mind that we're talking about very long periods of time. When the Spanish Inquisition, the Spanish colonization came for the Aztec and Mexica culture, it was already within what we're calling the last sun, the 5th sun, because that was about around 500 years ago. So most of what they predicted, most of what they were working on was working up towards this time that we're in now. because they knew what era they were in and what its nature was, and they knew that this would be the time when there would be a change again. So some people know about the Aztec calendar from the Mayan calendar and the predictions that were made around 2012. And the difference between the Mayan and the Aztec, just so that we clarify that, because a lot of people were wondering, well, how come nothing happened at 2012? Everyone had quite a buzz around what that meant. Well, the counts are different between the Mayan and the Aztec. And the reason is because the Mayans were an earlier culture. So the cultures that came later that were still working with a similar kind of tools, they were still working with the basic same calendar. But the Aztecs, being later and being so devoted to cultivating knowledge and refining it, based on things that were still happening and that they were still observing, they adjusted the count. So the count of the Mayans said that there would be this big shift in 2012. But the count of the Aztecs was more like an updated one that came many, many generations later that said, actually, the big transition is only going to begin in 2012, the first sight of it. And that it would be the way that that night goes into day or day goes into night, very gradual. So what I'm going to describe to you here is what they prophesized and what they were talking about, and how they saw it was a much slower progression. So, okay. So the Aztec calendar's name in Nahuatl is Huaxicali, for those who want to keep things more on the traditional side. Huaxicali means the house of the navel of the eagle, and the eagle means like moving to our highest destiny. So the whole Aztec calendar was looking at the cycles that we live and the different kinds of accounts that they made from day to day to the long cycle of the suns. And everything that I'm sharing is what was encoded in the calendar, if you know how to read it, which of course was all images and symbols from a very metaphoric language that wasn't understood by the Spanish priests who first tried to look at it. But when the Aztecs decided to stop fighting, when they knew that if they were to keep fighting the Spanish after the diseases that they hadn't been introduced to were introduced through the water that, of course, the Spanish had used to wash wounds and that the Aztecs used to wash, when they were introduced to diseases and that wiped out most of their warriors and they were weakened at that point, they knew that they wouldn't win and that if they were to keep fighting, they would die and there would be no descendants for the future. So there's a very beautiful speech made by the last ruler priest, whose name was Watemak. And he gave a very poetic statement to the people saying that their son was dying, that the way of life that they knew was dying. And essentially that because it was already the fifth sun, and this was just a moment that some of those forces came strongly to them, that they knew that they couldn't fight the tide of what was happening all over the world. And I'll talk about the fifth sun in a moment. But instead of fighting, what would be important would be to pass down the treasure, to hide their treasure, and then pass it down from mother to daughter, from father to son. And that way that the descendants of the future, both of the lineage, but also for everyone, that these ways would be preserved. So they literally intended and said to pass them down secretly so that they would live for all the generations up until now, and then in 2012, that they should be shared widely to everyone so that they could be of use to people living at the dawn of the sixth sun. And that would be where we are now. A lot of this material was published in a book in 2012 called The Dawn of the Sixth Sun by Sergio Magana, also La Coyo, who is a teacher, my teacher as well. And it was out of print, but now it's going to be reprinted because so many of the predictions have come to be very specifically come to light. So if you want to read it, it's a heady book, but it's very good, very, very clear on the whole tradition. So I'm going to give you the very short version of what the suns are and what they've looked like leading up to where we are now, and what will help us potentially as we move into the new era that's just at the beginning now. So what they described in each of the suns from the calendar is really only about a sentence or two, very, very short amount of information. But in the metaphoric language, what was said is actually a lot richer if you can dive in and understand it and do the analysis. The first sun that was recorded was attributed to a kind of people that were said to be larger, like giants, or like in some other cultures would describe the same thing. Like in myth, we have the Titans, the giants, the Elohim, the so larger somehow than human, a little bit different than us, maybe preceding the human race. So they had the same idea that it was a son of darkness, a Nawal son. Nawal means the dreaming nature, the dreaming side of life, the night, the feminine, the forces that are of the mystery, and our internal, like a more internal side, who we actually are, not just who we imagine ourselves to be with our ego in the day. So it was the first sun ruled by those forces. So it was a time that was described to be more like an era of magic, of sorcery, of dreaming, where that was much more palpable. However, each one of these eras was said to have a fault, something that the people had, like a compulsive weakness that ended up being a part of what caused their self-destruction. So this is the information that the calendar gives. What was the nature of that whole age? And what was the problem of the people that eventually led to them becoming, the end of that era? And that one, it said that the people were not honest, and that they ended up all perishing. And it doesn't describe very much more about how in that one. But the very first sun, that was followed in terms of what's recorded. So this is all before like our recorded history, far before. So we have these informations in our cultures from stories mostly. And the second sun was called the son of the wind. So if you want the other names, Ocelotonatia was the first. The second is Ehekatonatia. That's the son of the wind. This one, all that is said is that the humans became monkeys and that the wind blew them away. So monkey in the glyphs from the calendar has to do with art and culture and the gifts of creativity, but also of like the pleasures of living, the pleasure side of life. And so what it points to is that the people most likely surrendered to pleasures. They must have had a very developed artistic culture with many beautiful buildings and arts and all of that really developed, but that they didn't have a lot of discipline and purpose, and they were a little unfocused, a little bit more given to pleasure, and that they created their own self-destruction from that. One of the things that I learned from my teacher was that this time might be similar to what's referred to in the Sodom and Gomorrah from the Bible. I don't know, but that's a possibility, is that the times pointing to the same, a little bit of the same information. The third sun, which was called Tonatia, just a fire sun, this was a period where it said that people became like jade turkeys. That's our image, because jade was the most precious. But a turkey is not a grand bird, but holds themselves very grand with their feathers and their display when they want to. And so that's the metaphoric, the image for ego, for having a inflation or deflation, so that when you think of yourself as more or less than you really are. And that the world ended in a rain of fire. And that could have been pointing to a volcano or some war, maybe with fire being like a weaponized. So, that's not entirely clear, but a lot of these ones, especially as the suns go on, the way that they describe how that world ended, that era ended, is both a little bit literal and metaphoric together. So coming to the fourth sun, Atul Tonatia, the son of water. This one, water is really about, it means the emotions within the cultural tradition. So it relates to your inner world and your emotional self. And then there were four waters, the drought, so what you're lacking, the hail, your problems, the flood, what you have in excess, and the rain, which was the right amount of water for things to grow in beauty. So the most important thing to solve if you're talking about emotions and waters in the tradition is your addiction to suffering. So what's said about this time is that the people had a lot of heavy emotions, and that they were creating, they were very much in without solving that addiction to suffering. So always creating other new problems, no matter what the aspects, how they might manifest, in order to have some kind of feed a need for attention or for care or for something, the way that we learn as babies to get what we need, we cry. And so in this sun, people had the problem of always creating problems and having the tendency towards an overflood of emotions. And it said that there was literally a flood. So whether that corresponds maybe to some of the stories we've heard about, beautiful places that were then flooded or taken underwater, cities like Atlantis, if that is real, and Lemuria, these types of places. So that's what was the lore of the fourth sun, which leads us to the fifth sun, which is the important one for our discussion tonight. The fifth sun would be almost all the time that we have recorded history, everything that we've lived with, and that the generations that we pretty much know about have lived with. The fifth sun is called the Tecpatl Tonatia. Tecpatl means the obsidian knife, and that's actually the tongue in the center of the Aztec calendar is not a tongue, but a flint. The flint is the knife of justice or injustice. So this sun was called the angry sun, or the sun of injustice, which means that the energy or the medicine of this sun, which of course would be what the Aztecs recorded the most because it's what they knew the most about, because it was their era. The sun of power imbalance, power over, where one has to be pushing down on someone in order to rise up. Where anger and violence are common, that people get exactly what they create, so that there's a very quick karma, what we call the old winds, where one group is oppressing the others. So we have, looking at our history, of course, colonization and genocide, war, inquisition, it's over and over and over again, oppression of women, oppression of the feminine deeply, oppression of all of the, the magical traditions, the mystery arts, and these things becoming quite dangerous to even tap into. And not only that, but the sun's work, they go from a Nawal sun to a tonal sun, back to Nawal and then to tonal. So like I said, Nawal, where the first one started, is the sun of the night, the mystery, dreaming arts. The next one would be of the tonal, meaning that's everything that you want, that satisfaction for you comes from reaching outside of yourself. It's not about looking within. In fact, the tendency is to avoid looking within, but instead to go with material gain, power, influence, amassing wealth or land, these kinds of things, ownership. And that's the fifth sun. The fifth sun was very much a tonal sun. And we see, organized religion, having so many violent wars and things over it as well. So even in the realm of spirituality, the fifth sun is changing the tone. And so looking at our time, the time that we've known, it seems to match, right? The sun of injustice, the sun of anger, the oppression of women, of animals, time of racism, colonization, a big gap between the rich and the poor, and anyone who is different, who wants to express differently. So the fifth sun, it was known to be a difficult sun, and certainly the sun that ended the culture of the Mexicas, almost. But they knew that from where they were standing in 500 years would be the dawn of the next sun. And that's why they put so much attention in trying to preserve the knowledge that they had cultivated. And they're not the only culture to have done this, but they're one, right, very close to where we are now, and that we can tap into to create some perspective on what we're seeing now. So what they saw, based on their observations and calculations, was that the sixth sun was going to be the polar opposite of the last sun. That the sixth sun, first of all, would switch to being a Nawal sun, so a sun of dreaming, a time when people would have to and want to ultimately to look within, to work with capacities that had long been buried for the fifth sun. And so there was also a prediction that they passed down that said that the indigenous cultures of the Americas would sleep for 500 years, and then at this time that we're living right now, they would awaken and return. So it all is tied together. They call the sixth sun the white sun. So Itzak Tonatia is the son of Quetzalcoatl. So Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent rising. It's not exactly a god, that they're not gods exactly the way that usually described by anthropologists, but more like essences, energies that govern principles within us and without us. And the Quetzalcoatl energy is very similar to like the Kundalini energy of a rising energy within your own system of, we call them totonal kaios, but the same as almost as chakras, that basically wakes up your own capacities, the energies that you have, the talents that you have that you haven't used, in order to take you to the precious knowledge, like a version of enlightenment and awakening capacities that that maybe we haven't been using or haven't used yet, related to dreaming and creating, co-creating more and being more in alignment with the unseen forces with the earth and with the cosmos. So it's not unlike some of the things that you hear about the age of Aquarius, you know, these other structures or ways of understanding that were predictions about the time that we're in. It's kind of similar, but they were more specific. So they said that a new consciousness would arise in our time, and that the Quetzalcoatl, is like the plural of the Quetzalcoatl, that would return. And what it means is that it wouldn't be like one leader, you know, who was enlightened to come and show us. It would be the time when that pathway inside of all of us would emerge, so that there would be the opportunity for everyone, very democratically, to awaken in this way, to have their energy cleared of what we carry from the other suns, and to awaken the capacities for dreaming, for co-creating, along with the dream of the earth and of the cosmos, for enlightenment, essentially, and some sort of new era for humankind to evolve. And that there would be the possibility to dream and to create consciously, working for the benefit of the collective. It's also called the sun of flowers, because the flowering is our metaphor for solving your underworlds, which means your unconscious issues and your repetitive patterns from your ancestors and your own life and your own negative tendencies, changing what you do in the world and what you repeat, so that ultimately you have emotions that are coming from a place of creating beauty and creating knowledge in your life, which takes you to the knowledge of inner paradise. Then flowering is like what you spend your whole lifetime working towards, if you're on the path, that you solve the problems that you have and that you've inherited, and that you come to awaken the gifts and the knowledge that you would like to. And so, not to spend too much time, since we only have a little, but I want to talk about the years that we're in right now. So what was said is about the sun, the white sun, the flower sun, was that that there would be earthquakes and that everyone would die. So I'm not saying that to scare anyone, because remember, it's not literal. Everyone death in the culture, it meant change, like dramatic change, a deep change that would happen rather all at once. So would earthquake means the same thing, like a dramatic change. So both parts of the sentences that are left to us about how the sixth sun comes about means that there's a relatively sudden change, and that no one is able to not be changed. But then everything that it talks about, what the six suns potential is quite beautiful, actually. And so the question for me and for everyone remains, how do we get through this transition time when potentially we're talking about literal or metaphoric earthquakes and everybody having to change? And we know we're on the precipice of climate change, and we know that we've come to a certain point culturally that where things are they're not working for the majority of people. Maybe some people are prospering a lot and the majority not very much. Well, they actually broke down the transition of this particular time. Whoa, honey, careful. My son ran into the computer. Can you be careful, sweetheart? Very careful. Back over there, please. So when they described, they said that the count would actually begin lightly in 1991. For 20 years, we would see the first wave of external change. That it would be like a half step towards people beginning to get more internal, but not quite. And what we saw in that time was technology, bringing people into this world of the phone, of the computer, of the virtual world. It's not the real world anymore, but it isn't exactly self-examination and internal yet. Then they marked December 21st, 2012. That would be the beginning of 9 years of underworlds. Underworlds are the unconscious problems and issues that are underneath and that repeat, or where we get trapped. And what do you see? You know, a lot of the things that were the major problems of humanity, some of the ugliness, the nationalism, the racism, these things have reemerged as if we thought that they were over, they've shown themselves to still be there. So things coming up and out that were buried is the what we were just in. And then 2020 and 2021 were marked as the most difficult years, and 2026. So 2020 was said to be the beginning of the actual change, where the energy of the sixth sun starts to come to the same where the energy of the fifth sun. And then after that, the sixth sun starts rising. But in the 4 stages that would happen, they described that first thing would be fear, that there would be a fear of fear, and that the earth would start to show its imbalance. And that when the earth had imbalance, it would be expressed in a couple of ways. Virus and bacteria, natural disaster, and financial contraction. So we're seeing all of that now. And with the social collapse as well. The second step comes in 2021, according to the tradition, and they saw that as a failure of technology, actually, that there might be solar waves, they predicted, that are coming closer to the earth from the sun. And then when that happens, that our internet and our things that we've become to rely on will become less stable. So working sometimes, not working sometimes. And that would mean that the people who are using the sort of internet virtual world as a half step to not look within, this is my son, will also not be able to hold on to that, and will be forced to look more within. Okay, sweetheart. Okay. We got to take this real quick, and then you can go do it by yourself. Okay, excuse me for one moment, sorry.
This is King Arthur.
Yes, dear. So, okay. And then after that, the next stage would be that there is a sharp division in our culture between the 2 groups of people. One that become very angry with a lot of protests, rioting, and violence. And another that's able to adapt and actually enjoys to see harmonizing with what might come in this new sun. So they saw this time as a time of the return of the feminine and of the Nawal, of the night forces. And the most important thing that they said about having us survive this time and align and make use of the potential would be to align with the earth and other feminine forces. So that would be the earth, the most important, the night, your own unconscious and your dreams, and the force of the moon. So aligning with the feminine and aligning with the earth at this time is one way of communicating that that you want to be in harmony with the new sun, and that you want to stay, and that you want to be a part of this dream, so that you can also awaken and take advantage of the ability to awaken the capacities that may have been sleeping in us that we might need. And this is the part that always really takes my attention, because they did a lot of sacrifice, right? They sacrificed the culture that they knew. They stopped fighting for that. They put their heads down. They allowed themselves to become, like servants to the Spanish, so that they could preserve these teachings, because they firmly believed that the people of this time would need it. And so that gives me pause and makes me feel very humble to what they've done, and in particular, to pay attention to the practices that have come down that maybe are of use for aligning with this time to help us within. So, there's so much more to be said about the inheritance of these sons, but I'll leave with one little thought. Not only do we come from the history, the human history described in this, but that what they believe is that we have inherited a little of the problems of each of those sons within us. And usually we have maybe like one or two that are more pronounced within our own lives. So you might see in your life that you have issues with self-esteem or with power, that you have issues with like heavy emotions like depression and anxiety, that rules a lot of your life, or issues with feeling victimization or oppression, and that keeps you in a certain place, or, ego, right? And so we usually have one or two that we have to especially carry with the overall collective purpose that humanity solves these things and is able to move on. So now that we're here, and if we want to honor this notion that we're at the precipice of the sixth sun, which actually has quite a lot of opportunity in it. This practice that I want to share is about aligning with the Mother Earth with her two hidden names, which are like the two aspects of what the earth does for us. The first is Tlazolteotl. Tlazolteotl comes from the root word in Nahuatl, tlazoli, which means trash. This is like the part of the earth that recycles what energy we need to release. So that takes from us what we need, what we don't need anymore, what we need to let go of, and allows it to become energy for something else to grow. And the second, the Tlazotlateotl, which is the part of the earth that allows for things to grow. So these are the two forces we're going to be aligning with the practice today. And again, I've put my emails. I know there'll be questions and thoughts, and if there's not enough time to answer them here, I'm certainly available to talk to people more.
This is King Arthur. This is King Arthur.
So, if you see some statues in Mexico that are very old, sometimes you'll see a statue of a woman with one hand behind the back and the other one holding a hat at the heart. This is actually the practice we're going to do. That's a visual cue, a reminder of this old practice, ancient practice. So for this one, I'll just describe it to you briefly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, writing notes with that. But I'm going to have you stand up. Well, actually, you can sit down for one moment. We're going to do some breathing together, and then we're going to begin. Okay. So we breathe with the number 7 for the moon, and then we're going to do the practice standing up. So we'll breathe silently first. So when we breathe, we inhale through the nose and we exhale through the mouth, counting 7 times as you inhale and 7 times as you exhale. So take a deep breath and exhale all the air out of your lungs. And inhale I'm going to count 7. Inhale. 7.
7.
7. 7. 7. 7.
7.
7. 7. 7. 7. 7.
7.
7. And everyone will stand up, starting with your right foot a little bit forward. Starting with your right foot forward. You're going to take with me for a moment. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so standing up, we're going to begin with the Tlazol Teodo, aligning with the earth as she is to take away that which we need to release. So we're going to focus on releasing our own heavy energies and that which we've inherited from all of the previous suns. So stand with your right foot forward and your right hand as a fist, coming to rest on your sacrum, the base of your spine. Close your eyes and start to breathe. And the important thing is to keep breathing. If you stop breathing, then you're not moving any energy. So this is about moving the energy based on each of the Totonalcayos. And I'm going to be guiding you as we go along. So with your eyes closed, breathing now from your sacrum. This is the area we call Kolo, the scorpion. And so now you're asking Tlazol Teodo to take your ancestral and destructive patterns, everything problematic from the first 5 suns. Breathe. Breathe. And release. Go do it, honey. You know how to do it.
Come.
And breathe.
I need help, Mommy. I know.
Including all of your own issues that you see repeating in yourself and in your family. If you have addictions, violence, limitations, this is the moment to release it all with your breath. And coming now to your second Totonalcayo, bringing just your right hand as a fist again, but this time to your navel, to your belly button. This is like your umbilical cord with the earth, the first point of contact with the earth between us and it. So here with your breath now, breathing, release all of the difficult influences of your birth, including what family you inherited if it was a hard childhood.
You should come in the bathroom.
Any problems you have with abundance, with creating, with manifesting your will.
Some kind of food. You should come in the bathroom. You should come in the bathroom. Ah, ouch, someone scratched me. Ouch.
And focusing on the exhale even more than the inhale to release any problems that you might be having right now. Adapting to these times if you've lost work. The fear of that sustenance challenge. And breathing to release. And now with same fist, you bring it to your heart, right up to the area of your chest, your heart. And this is the one that we call the flower, the Xochitl. And in this area, you're to release everything that's in the way of your flowering. So the obstacles that have kept you from your enlightenment. It could be a lot of things. So ancestors that have not been healed, underworlds that haven't been minimized, your own repetitive patterns that are in your way, emotions that need to be healed. And as well, while you're here and you're breathing towards everything that stops you from your flowering, you're also going to breathe to your thymus gland, which is very key to your immune system. Any potential illness or the potential to create suffering, to have that addiction to suffering, to create those problems or to be susceptible to them. So this is about creating an energy body that isn't as susceptible to what might be moving with the collective right now based on the transition of suns. So breathe to release all the obstacles to flowering and anything compromising your immune system here. And finally to the forehead. Here, just to remove anything that's in the way of your gifts unfolding, your gifts of dreaming, of lucid dreaming, of using your intuition, of trusting yourself, of your seeing. Breathe to clear. And now, bring your hands together and say Om Teodo. And you're going to now step forward with your left foot, bringing your right foot back. And now take a fist again, this time your left hand, and bring it to the base of your spine. The Tlazotla Teodo is the force again that helps us to create, the part of the earth that allows us to create. So now as we go through our Totonal Kaios, we're going to be working with becoming a person of the sixth sun. So our left foot forward, hand on the sacrum. Ask now the deep earth, the Tlazotla Teodo, to remake you and your energy body as a person of the sixth sun and all that that means, that your gifts for dreaming increase, that you are aligned with the earth as she changes her dream, that your immune system is strong in the way of not being vulnerable, not having to do things in the old way, like fighting illness like a war, but being strong and healthy because you're invulnerable, because you're resonating in a different way. Ask to be a person who can meet the challenges of this new era with grace. And breathe. And now bring that same fist to your belly, left foot forward still, at your navel now. And here, as you close your eyes, you breathe, you're going to plant, ask and command that in this new era, that you will be able to manifest whatever you need, that you will have the abundance that you need, maybe more than you did before, that you will be able to adapt and create whatever you need, no matter what the constraints are that come. Breathe, planting that you become very good at manifesting whatever it is you need to create. And bring your hand up to your heart, the Sochiro. Here, you're asking now and commanding and asking for your flowering, that you're able in this new era, as we see the beginnings of it, to reach the capacity of flowering, to come into your own version of enlightenment, which means you heal and solve the problems that you've been living and carrying, minimizing your underworlds. And that you come to the precious knowledge, that you come to the knowledge you need to find to become the highest potential of who you were meant to be and who you can be. Coming to your highest possibility. With all that it means in the sixth sun, to potentially be a person to access capacities that haven't been with us for a long time. Spiritual awakening on a deep level. And also connect here with your thymus, that our immune system stops working in the old way of needing a very invasive, strong treatments that have to fight any invasion of illness, but instead start working in the more feminine way, the way of a son of the Nawal, where it's about becoming impermeable, less permeable to the energy of disruption, less permeable to imbalance. And because your system moves towards harmonizing. Making yourself bright and strong. And bringing the same hand as a fist to your throat. And breathing here now to increase your power, to increase your self-esteem. And that might mean healing the failures, the perceived failures, retrieving your sense of power and strength, increasing your magnetism, increasing your sense of believing in yourself. And breathe. And finally coming to the forehead, place between the brows, and here intending with your breath, asking the Tlazotla Teotl to open your perceptual skills for seeing, for dreaming, for creating and navigating the new, so that you come to have a very clear intuition that helps you to guide all the changes of our times that are coming. That you can trust your inner sight, that you can work with your dreams to heal yourself and to create what you need to create. The return of the skills of the dreamer. Breathing it in to become a person of the sixth sun, one of the Quetzalcoatl. And finally, bringing both of your hands together, standing with your feet together, allowing all of that energy of the deep earth to integrate into your system. And we say, Om Teotl, Ntlatsokomati. Om Teotl, that we integrate all of the changes that can be made in such a subtle level, that we can become the people of the sixth sun, the people who awaken to gifts, the people who flower, the people who can partner deeply with the earth as the earth stream changes, to become the stewards of this new time. And may the injustices and difficulties and oppression of the last sun pass with as much gentleness as possible, and the energies of the new sun emerge with as much grace for all of us as possible. Om Teola. So a very simple practice, and if you can repeat it, it's better. If you can do it every day, as simple as it is, even just for a few minutes, works very well over time. To remake ourselves with the possibilities of this new sun, and to clear what we're carrying from our own lives and from the past, the collective past. And that's it. It's a small practice, but it holds a lot of power. And now I know we're probably out of time. Yeah. So I'll leave it up to Scott will talk at whether there's a chance to have questions or whether we can email questions, because I'll answer if people are emailing.